Okay, welcome to the January Parenting Hacks edition. We are so excited tonight to have Dr. Dawn Eichen, who is an assistant professor of pediatrics at UCSD San Diego. Sorry, UC San Diego, as they say. She's a licensed clinical psychologist, and this is not my first time coming to one of Dr. Dawn's presentations. So I'm really excited to have this content and also to have her be able.
Looks like Maura froze up there. I'm gonna go ahead and welcome Dr. Eichen and go ahead and turn it over to you. I will stop sharing and you can go ahead and take over.
Eichen, thank you.
All right, perfect. And my slides are up, right? All right, super. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak today. And what you can expect is I'll do a quick overview about myself and CHEER, which is the center that I work with at UC San Diego. And then we're going to talk a little bit about healthy eating and activity for the whole family. And then I'm going to cover some strategies that are geared towards picky eating. And then I'll wrap up with some resources that are maybe available locally that can help. And then we'll have
posiblemente pueden ayudar y tener.
So just to give you a bit about my background, I completed my undergraduate work at Duke, and I did some research while I was there in the Duke Eating Disorders program. So it's been quite a lot of years that I've been working on eating behavior research. And from there, I went and pursued my clinical psychology doctorate degree at Temple University, where I continued to do these types of work of helping people and families learn to eat healthy and sort of manage their weight in a healthy way. Then I moved on, started coming west and went to Washington University in St. Louis, where I did a postdoctoral fellowship, where again, it was focused on sort of weight management behaviors before I landed here at UC San Diego, where I continue this work as faculty as part of CHEER, or the Center for Healthy Eating and Activity Research. And at CHEER, we really work hard to try to develop, in terms of research, additional treatments, new treatments, novel treatments that really help people manage their eating behaviors, as well as have an arm of patient care, and also do things like this in terms of education to try to help educate the community in regards to obesity, weight-related behaviors, and eating-related disorders. So CHEER really began, it's hand in hand. We do our research work is informed by stuff that we've learned on clinical side, and then we take our research programs that have been successful and work to get them into the clinic so that they are more broadly disseminated and available to more people in the community and even broader across the country whenever possible. So that's sort of the slant that my talk takes and my background of trying to develop new things while balancing it with also the idea of we want these to be used. So the basic theory around weight is that people's weight will stay the same if you're in the state of energy balance, which is where your calories in equal the calories that go out. And so the calories in come in by anything that we eat and drink that contains calories, and the calories out, naturally, our bodily functions all burn a little bit, but the bulk of the expenditure certainly comes from our physical activity and our day-to-day movement. When people are tipped out of balance, if the calories in are more than the calories out, you'll see weight gain. If you flip the balance the other direction and your calories out are more than your calories in, then that's where you'll be in a state of weight loss. And so a lot of the treatments that I'm going to talk to you about today are sort of centered around this idea. And so we focus on decreasing the calories coming in and increasing the calories going out, all in a healthy way. And so the treatments for children when we're working with kids are family-based. The family is a key unit. The people in the household are a key unit. And for parent, that can be substituted for any guardian. It doesn't necessarily have to be a parent that can play the role in this treatment. It typically helps if it's the adult who is the sort of primary preparer of the food, since they usually have the biggest say. But families can certainly work together or multiple caregivers be involved. And so the typical treatment that is currently recommended as what they call the gold standard behavioral treatment is family-based treatment for obesity. And the parent or the chosen adult participates along with the child. Typically, parents will attend a group with parents, child will attend a group with child, the other children, so that the content can be delivered in a developmentally appropriate manner. And then we have different levels. There is sometimes some time where the parent and child will work individually with one of the group leaders or another treatment provider. But like I mentioned earlier, nutrition is certainly a key piece. That's where we're going to focus on what's coming into the body, what calories are coming in. We also have the physical activity part, not just the purposeful physical activity like going for a run or going out for a walk, but some of the more lifestyle. How can you move from so much screen time to increasing activity throughout the day? And then there are a lot of parenting skills. Because parents are really the people who can drive these behavior changes in children, especially those who are not old enough to really obtain a lot of food by themselves or go out and buy food for themselves, that can come into big play. Parenting skills like reinforcement, so sort of rewarding and praising, and modeling, being the key model, representing. We ask the parent kind of regardless of their weight to model the healthy behaviors that we are trying to get the child to pick up, because often the child really will mimic the parent's behavior. And we encourage the parent and child to work as a team, sort of checking in daily on how things are going so they can reinforce the positive behaviors, help problem solve when difficulties come up. And that's where some of these other behavioral skills come in play. So in some programs where people might just give you guidelines, try to eat this many calories, try to exercise this amount, the difference with family-based treatment is it really helps teach you how to work on changing the behaviors. And we'll talk a little bit about some of these elements. One of the things that our research center has looked at is, can we provide the treatment to the parent without the child? So again, it seemed like parent factors were really driving the changes. Research consistently shows parent weight change really predicts the child weight change. And parent-only treatments have been successful in other child behavioral disorders. So we thought it made sense that this could apply to weight change and weight management. It's developmentally appropriate since the kids are still on the younger side, and it has a greater potential to spread it around to the community. So if only the adult has to attend, some adults may be able to attend while the child's at school, or you don't have to, you can do it while the child's at other activities. And it's a little less costly because you're only treating the parent instead of having to also have people treat the children and have another separate group. So we ran a large study where we had 150 children and their parents participate, and half of them were randomized to parent-only arm, and the other half had that gold standard treatment where both the parent and the child attended treatment. The content of the treatment was otherwise exactly the same in the parent group. And we followed them for the 6 months of the treatment program, as well as 18 months past treatment being over. So we followed them for a total of 2 years. And what we saw, so the red line, the darker red line, is the parent-only group, and the more orange, yellowy line is the parent-child. But you can see it's very hard to see a difference between these two lines. And that's because what our results showed is it didn't really matter whether the child attended treatment. So that supported our thoughts that parents can really be a big agent of making these changes, and we may not need to have the child attend, which was really exciting for us when we started to think about other populations and working with children, perhaps who couldn't necessarily participate in a group even if they wanted to, or children of all different ages could potentially be lumped into one group. And so we looked at this study. We did a pilot program called Team Up, which stood for Transforming Eating, Activity, and Motivation Utilizing Parents. And this was geared for parents of children with autism spectrum disorder. Since there's a wide variety of functionality that you may see in children with autism spectrum disorder, by only treating the parents, it didn't matter if their child was verbal or not. It didn't matter if their child had behavioral difficulties or not. We were only going to be working with parents. And we also tailored the treatment a bit to help parents manage things in a way that would be compatible with autism spectrum disorder, and incorporated a lot of those behavioral skills that may be taught in other programs like applied behavioral analysis or ABA, if some of you are familiar with that. So it was a pilot grant. It was really small. We included parents of kids who were 5 to 14 years old who were diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. The children had to have a BMI in the 85th to the 99th percentile, which meant they were in the overweight category. And we used similar type of treatment as I described, only delivered to the parents. And it was tailored again a bit for special things that we thought would be unique to parents of children with autism spectrum disorder. And all in all, we received positive feedback from the parents. They reported liking the groups, that they would recommend it to other people. On average, we saw weight loss in the parents as well as the children. And again, the children did not come to treatment. We did not interact directly with the child, except to weigh them at the beginning of treatment, in the middle of the treatment sessions, and at the end of treatment. We also saw from data collected that child physical activity appeared to increase and child vegetable consumption appeared to increase. So that's sort of some of the sort of premise. It sort of shows from start to end that these things are working. Now I'm going to go through and show you and teach you a little bit about some skills or maybe some specific hacks that you might be able to start applying at home if this is a behavior or thing you want to work on within your household. So in these treatments, one of the biggest things that we prioritize is what we call tracking or self-monitoring. And what that is simply writing down and keeping track of everything that you and your child eats and working to count those calories. The reason why this is successful is you can't change what you don't know. And in a lot of behaviors that you want to change in life, if you pay attention and track how often they happen, you can start to look at patterns. You can start to see areas you can do things differently or identify areas that maybe you need help with. We also have people track their physical activity for the same reason, so that you know how much you're doing. And if you have an ultimate goal that you're working towards, you can see how successful you are or figure out what's getting in the way of you getting that physical activity. And so with calories, there are different ways that you can certainly look at to try to reduce, but typically we encourage people to sort of start at a baseline. It's really hard to go from 0 to 100, in anything. Thinking about if you haven't been working out, to go from nothing to exercising an hour a day. That's not likely. It can be difficult. You can get discouraged easily. So we use shaping a lot to slowly increase, say, something like activity. So if you haven't really been active at all, maybe you try to be active for 10 minutes, 2 days a week. then maybe 10 minutes 3 days a week, then maybe it's 20 minutes 3 days a week, and so on until you reach these targets. So similarly with reducing calories, if you're going to try to work on this, it would be best to get some professional ideas of what ranges to make sure you're still providing an appropriate amount of food for your growing child. But we also encourage you to shape it down. So again, don't just go from what they've normally been eating to cutting it down to where you want to go. You sort of shape it down a little bit, and you never want to have your child losing too much weight. With children, they are also growing. So a lot of times in child weight management, sometimes simply just trying to get them to maintain their weight can be very successful, such that as they continue to grow, their overall sort of weight status can change. And one of the ways, if you're thinking, how can I possibly do it? There are apps that are available, such as MyFitnessPal, that can be downloaded for free, where you can start tracking and counting calories if that's something. We don't have any sort of deal with them. I'm not sponsored by them. I have no interest in them or that company, but it's just one that is commonly used that will sometimes encourage people if they want the quick and easy thing to do. But simple paper and pen is all that you need to track anything as well. Other ways to think about cutting back how much you eat is starting to pay attention to portion sizes. So there are plenty of things available, like the image on the left, that sort of help you, show you, here's how big the protein should be. That's where the picture of the chicken is meant to be. Here's how much you should have for fruits on your plate. Here's so much vegetables, and then here's how much sort of starch that you have. So it sort of helps you, not just visually, but sort of physically contains the amount of food that you put in each part to help. The other side is a visual representation. It comes from myplate.gov. The URL is on the next slide, and this was something that I added in lately, so it might also, I don't know if we want to try to put it in the chat, or I can sort of update that for you folks. But I like this one visually. If you ideally can get to a place where you have half your plate of fruits and vegetables, that like think about the main meals, that's it. It's a good portion distribution of foods that you'd be providing yourself and your families. So like I mentioned, that myplate.gov, as well as this other website, which will be on the slides that are sent out. And again, feel free, whoever's sending the slides, if you want to try to add in that other link, feel free. But they also have a lot of recipe suggestions on both of these and other tips and tricks that might be similar to what I'm sharing that you can always refer back to as well. And I think even the MyPlate one might give you, if you answer some questions, and I know it's available in English and Spanish, that website, I think you can answer some questions and they might even be able to help provide some calorie range guides for people. So one of the other ways when we're talking to children, understanding calories can be really difficult for a child to pay attention, especially if your child can't really count. So the traffic light was sort of taken on as this thing called the traffic light diet. So a lot of people are familiar with green, yellow, and red sort of symbols and what they mean. And that's been coined in the field as sort of go, slow, and whoa. So like the go foods are going to be things like your fruits and your vegetables, where you really can eat them for the most part whenever you want. Slow are sort of foods maybe would have more calories, still have some nutritional value, but maybe they're a little bit higher, say in fat or in sugar. So something maybe like some cheeses, even sort of light cheeses at times. You don't want to eat too much. It's not really, you can have a free-for-all. It's still sort of moderate. And then the woe foods, things like cakes, cookies, stuff that really doesn't have much nutritional value in it, and maybe things that are more fried and things like that. We really don't label and like to label foods as good or bad even. So I try to use the terms like more nutritious and maybe less nutritious. Moderation is key. It's not realistic to think that a kid will never have cake, but it's working so that they understand this is something we have once in a while. And when we have it, we watch how much we eat, and that's totally fine. So if anybody is looking for a little quick thing that you can do at home, you can sort of use and borrow the stoplight, and you can get green stickers and red stickers and try to get them to put green stickers on some of those things like fruits and vegetables, and the red stickers on woes, and sort of help teach them that the red foods are ones that you want to stop and think about. And then even work on thinking about, with the red foods around the house, are some of these foods in the house foods that we shouldn't necessarily keep in the house? And are there other green foods? You can sort of walk through a supermarket maybe and sort of help have them pick out other green foods to try. Some green foods we want to bring into the house to try. Which brings me to my next point, what we call stimulus control. And I think it's really depicted by this image on the slide, that you really want to make your house the easiest place that sort of has that safety bubble to it, where it's easier to make healthier choices. So a lot of people like to use like that mantra, out of sight, out of mind. If it's not there, people can't just grab it. And a lot of times when, I'm thinking as adults, when we're tired late at night, we're going to grab for usually those tempting foods. If it's not there and we had to think, is this worth my time to go out to the store now to get it? We probably won't put that effort into it. So you can't eat it if it's not there. That works really well for children because they can't find it if it's not there. They can't tell you it's here somewhere. So even if you hide it, your kid can find it. And these foods still exist at places. They may have access to some of these things at school or sort of parties, friends, and even sometimes in therapy, which we have had to work with some folks where maybe food was being used as a reward to try to reduce that as being the pattern. Similarly, in the home, we really encourage regular eating pattern. So that consists of 3 meals and 1 to 2 snacks a day. So if you're eating throughout the day and not skipping, then it sort of keeps it steady, less likely to have people get so hungry where they overeat. And we do want to make sure that the snacks are going to be smaller. So we want to make sure after school, the kids may come home hungry, depending on what time they eat lunch. Sometimes it's more like a second breakfast, depending on where you're at. But you want to sort of be mindful about that and make sure they don't eat too much, because we want them to eat dinner. And again, anywhere where we can avoid using food for motivational or reward for other behaviors is really helpful. So other things people like to keep in their mind is like, food is fuel. That's what we want to try to use food for in terms of eating it, fueling our body to do all those fabulous things that we want and need it to do. So here are some tips that may help you within your home for children of all sort of levels. Being more predictable. So if you start to get on a schedule, if you're giving cues for transitions and changes in the routines, that will start to help. You don't want to make big changes all at once if your child is someone that does not adjust very well to change. Having the schedule, when is it mealtime? When is it snack time? What do we do in between those things might help the children learn when to need it. And similarly, if your child has difficulty with language, then using more visual aids or very specific things can be much more helpful to them. For children who can be involved, letting them be involved is helpful. So making choices together, it makes it feel like they have a bit more of a say. But one of the first things that I learned as a therapist is never ask a question you don't want to hear the answer to. So instead of saying, do you want fruit? Ask them, do you want a banana or an apple? You are still letting them make a choice, but you have already restricted the outcome to things that you are okay with and are approving in that moment. So your child still can maintain some independence, but you are working to achieve that goal of these were the foods that were offered. Priming can certainly work to get people towards the behaviors. Being consistent is always helpful. So sometimes behaviors will get worse before they get better when you're trying to make changes. And so try to remain calm and neutral in these places. It takes a lot for kids to starve. Parents get very concerned very quickly that they're not going to feed their child, but the child will soon learn to take things that might not be their most desired foods. And I'll give you some more tips about changing those preferences as well. Life can be tough. It can be chaotic. You might have a lot of people in the household, very little time. So be smart when you're cooking. Healthy meals do not have to be complex. They do not have to be made from scratch every day. So if you have certain days and times that you have more flexibility, for me personally, I do the bulk of my cooking on a Sunday because that's the time that I'm home, I'm not out, I'm not working late. I can do this. I cook a few meals, and it doesn't take that much longer to make sort of 6 portions versus 4 portions or whatever it might be. So if you make some extra, you can either use it and serve the same thing a few times over the week, or make use of your freezer and store things. And if you separate them into appropriate portions or sort of what might feed your family, then when times get harder to cook fresh stuff, you have backups there ready to go. Think about making breakfast and lunch easy as possible. It's okay to eat some of the same foods day to day, especially if it's easier to make healthy breakfasts and healthy lunches during the school week. And then on the weekends, you can get a little more creative if that's when you have more time to add additional healthy options in. For physical activity, scheduling it in can really help. Work again as a family. Think about what to do, what you want to do, what activities would be fun. It doesn't have to be a traditional sport. It doesn't have to be too hard. Even just walking is great. If seeing certain things along the way will be helpful, you can consider going outside of your neighborhood to take a walk. If somebody really likes seeing the beach or by a park, something like that. And again, with that activity, you want to shape it up so that you don't go have any injuries. And again, you're sort of building it up because small successes lead more successes, and very little changes made in a row over a long period of time will lead to big changes in the long run. On the other side can be some picky eating. You may see this, some elements of picky eating in children of all weight behaviors. I do want to introduce one diagnosis that is a bit newer that people aren't as familiar with, and it's called ARFID, or Avoidant Restrictive Food Intake Disorder. And in this case, it's when children are underweight or lacking in sort of nutritional needs. Their needs are not being met. They may see significant weight loss, or they're not making their expected weight gain or growth. They have deficiency, and they may not really eat much at all, or maybe have to rely on certain supplements. And this can certainly be interfering in a lot of other areas in their life. And this is not explained by just not having food, and it's not related to any other eating disorders, and it's not related to any other condition. If you do have concerns, this may sound like your child, certainly makes the most sense to contact a professional to seek out a diagnosis and make sure you're ruling out any other medical conditions. So within this disorder, they have different subtypes. So you see some children who have food fears where they're so afraid of like choking on their food or throwing up or something like that, they will just not eat at all. Then you have kids who have poor appetite that lack interest in food, might say that their stomachs hurt a lot or they get full quickly. And then this other group, which you hear a lot of these similar behaviors in children with autism, sometimes you can have both conditions. And the similar skills that are used in treating ARFID can be used in any picky eating or children who may have both. And so that might be things like really that specific sensitivity to taste and texture. You can only have this type of brand, and really having not a wide variety of foods that you are sort of okay to eat. So the best resource that I'm aware of in San Diego is the UC San Diego Eating Disorder Center pediatric program that does treat the bulk of the ARFID work, and is also doing some of the big research in ARFID and in ARFID programs. So if you are interested in learning more about that, feel free to contact them or check out their website. But practically, and again, people do not have to have a diagnosis or a formal disorder. Anyone who's picky eating, some of these skills and strategies can work for that. Even if you're sort of thinking, I really don't like a lot of vegetables, and how am I supposed to help my child? We can all learn this together. So again, stepping stones, to start with in terms of how you introduce foods and kind of praising the different steps along the way. So first, sometimes it may even be allowing the food to sit on the table for a little bit, and just introducing the food to be there can be helpful. Then maybe it's let them sort of touch it and play it. You don't even try to have them eat it, but they can just sort of grab it, the broccoli, a little piece of broccoli, whatever. Then working on sort of like smelling it. Again, that's sort of the touching, the little tasting, and then eventually working to eat it. So we do things more frequently if our actions are reinforced. So use that verbal praise. Good job touching the broccoli. Good job smelling the broccoli, whatever step it might be. Maybe you create a sort of reward chart down the road, or a token economy, or special interest time. Those are good ways to give them special time. If you make it fun, they may be more likely to try new foods. Maybe it's a game. What new food are we trying this week? Some people may enjoy that. Again, especially if your child can participate, maybe they can work to select it. Other ways to increase the types or the amounts of food are really, not going too far from the staples, but working to make them a little bit more flexible. So from pizza to different shapes and sizes of pizza. Nowadays with pizza, you could even get something with like slightly different crust texture, slightly different type of cheese. But here they were working to introduce wraps. So you sort of went from, the same flavors to then putting it on a tortilla where it still kind of looked like pizza, to starting to get it to the point where it's like folded, to it being more burrito-like. And then all of a sudden you have that many more options within that. Similar diagram kind of with the pasta, and maybe even getting it to some different colored sauces or different types of noodles. In terms of the healthy eating sides, with sort of thinking about fruits and vegetables, one of the more challenging ones, we'll go through it, but again, introducing it, maybe starting with simple things that they may like or decide to start liking, maybe going from sort of veggie chips, moving towards full veggies, things of that nature. But think about your child's flavor preferences, sort of look for patterns. Certain things are going to be more similar. So you don't necessarily want to start people on a fruit or vegetable that fewer people like. If you've got somebody who likes apples, then maybe you try things like pears. You kind of keep them sort of similarly. They like one berry, you try another berry, sort of similar things with melons. Some of the sweeter vegetables might be easier and more palatable for children at first to adapt to than going to some of the more bitter ones. Are there seasonings and other flavors that your child really likes that can help, that you can serve them with these fruits and vegetables? So again, if your child really likes ketchup, let them put ketchup on their vegetables. I don't really even care if you let them put ketchup on their fruit, if that's what'll get them to eat it. And then slowly you can reduce the amount of ketchup that they get with those foods, and you can till you hopefully get them eating them, maybe for the most part by themselves. But tips and tricks, sneaking them in there in sort of smoothies, maybe in sauces. If your kid eats tomato sauce, you can blend extra vegetables, get them in there. Again, pairing it with stuff they really like. So maybe putting, if they really like pizza, like small amounts of vegetables on there at first, and with their flavors and their condiments that they like. So sort of working your way up to it. So those are my tips. And just to kind of wrap up, we have some clinical services at Cheer available to some folks that where we take select insurance. We have currently we have outpatient groups for teens and adults. We have a few opportunities for some individual treatment, but we also have a binge eating / weight loss program. That one right now is geared towards adults. And then we often are recruiting children and adults of all ages for treatment studies. We currently have 2 open. We have another one that we're going to be launching soon for Latino families, the child between the ages of 5 to 10. And then we are expecting to get some additional funding to run a larger scale study, which will probably come up in about a year or so to do children with autism again. So the contact information for Cheer in general is there. My email is on the slides as well. And certainly a thank you to all of you for listening and paying attention, to the EFRC for having me here, and to my lab and my colleagues, without whom none of this could be possible.